Now, the Olympics created, and the Paralympics created, some once-in-a-lifetime spectator experiences. So, having been involved, what was the biggest lesson that you learned about spectator engagement from working on the Games?
Oh gosh, dare I say it? I actually think I go back to the BBC Sports Personality of the Year, 2012. And can you remember who won the Team of the Year? It was the London 2012 Volunteers. And I would say that the London 2012 Volunteers were probably the greatest experience I had, because those volunteers were the interface between LOCOG and the spectators, the attendees. And it was a really big challenge for everybody involved in that, because at the time, if those of you can remember, and those of us involved in sports ground safety management, there just wasn't and isn't enough trained, qualified personnel at the moment to put on an event like that. So we had to rely heavily upon the volunteer programme. And there was much criticism of the use of volunteers, and you know, I know there were quite some lengthy discussions with Gordon, who was working for JLARS at the time when he was working there for Newham. But you know, at the end of the day, we managed to train or recruit and train 15,000 steward volunteers who did a cracking job. They were highly motivated, professional people. They weren't paid. But I think at the end of that process, that was, to my mind, the greatest success, and brought into mind that we can use volunteers in the sports world and events world, so long as they're properly well trained. And I know there are many colleagues around these tables today who are safety officers with us at that event, and I think they would also give testimony to the success of the volunteer programme.
I would echo that. I was actually a games maker myself.
Oh.
And I went through the training process, and you know, some of it was common sense, but there was a huge sense of being part of something very special. But it was the degree of investment in those people that they felt they could make a difference to each spectator who came through the Games.
And just before I finish, I think one people we've got to look at, so we don't want to be number driven, but if you take a look at the Green Guide, the Green Guide has a rough ratio of 1 steward per 250 spectators. That's that rough guide in there. The Olympics, that ratio was dropped down to 1 to 70. And so that commitment and investment into spectator engagement and customer service really played dividends. And I know others have mentioned about customer service today, but to my mind, that's the way forward.
Okay, fantastic. And you touched on there about safety officers, the role they play, and obviously, you know, you're well known to some people here. There are safety officers out there. So I'm going to ask you, Sue, a little bit. What do you think makes for a really, really good safety officer? And does it matter if they're that engaged with the fans, that in touch? What do you think?
Absolutely. I think I have to be really careful about what I say here, because there's so many of them in the room that I've worked with. So a really good safety officer to me is and the ones I've worked with are people persons. They're people who can get on with people. They can listen, they can manage the team in the match control room, and they create that atmosphere of a team working together in a match control room. And then when something happens, you see them go straight into action, very clear decision making, very clear about what needs to happen to solve whatever's going on in the ground. But it's also being fully part of the club. I do unfortunately go to some grounds where you see a safety officer who's sort of parachuted in for a match. And really a good safety officer is one that's really embedded into the culture of the club and is able to influence the development of a safety culture. And in terms of fans, safety officers are not going to let fans do everything they want to do. Sadly, they wouldn't be able to do that. It wouldn't really work in their best interest or in the best interest of the fans. But a good safety officer is able to empathise with what the fans want and come to some sort of compromise situation that suits both sides. So really making sure that the fans have a safe and enjoyable experience, being part of the club and being able to really pull together a safety management team who works together is what I see as a good safety officer.
And then we get that theme again, working together, working across different groups,
Absolutely.
different roles, understanding everybody's function there. So with spectators at the heart, I'm going to come to you now, Rick, if I can, and just ask you if you can share an example where you think a local authority or a club has done that, put spectators at the heart of the experience, and what does that mean for safety? And I think you can draw on any number of examples, whether it's Liverpool, Everton, or even internationally. What do you think? What can you tell people here?
Well, certainly with the Green Guide being the international standard that it is, and every nation wants to buy into that Green Guide, and so I've had the fortunate opportunity of checking compliance with that Green Guide all over the world. And a particular project that I'm currently working on with a board member is in Perth, Australia. And they have an ethos in Perth, and it's called Fans First. And the thing that struck me throughout the project is that at every design stage, they've got the fans in. And this is a multi-use stadium, 80,000, and it's concerts, it's cricket, it's Australian football. But every design stage, they've got the fans in, and they're looking at how to improve and how to engage with fans. So this is not just at the operation stage. And even now, they're going to appoint the operators, and they have to engage with fans. So it's really important that fans are engaged. But even in this country, as inspectors, we sit on every safety advisory group of all the 92 clubs. There are some good examples. Manchester City and Liverpool are currently having massive redevelopments. And it just so happens that supporters are on the safety advisory groups at both Manchester City and Liverpool. And it's been fantastic because during that redevelopment, there is massive disruption. And it's important that the fans understand the rationale behind that disruption. And so at Liverpool, they were able to see the crowd flow modelling and why certain decisions are being made on safety, and then they could relay that back to fans. So I think it's really good sometimes to have supportive representation at safety advisory groups, and obviously it's always good to engage with supporters at design stages.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I am conscious of time, so we're not actually going to go to the floor. There will be a break later on today. Will you three be available to people if they have any questions about your role? You have multiple roles, but in your role as an inspector, they'll be happy. Okay, thank you all very much. So please join me in thanking Rick, Martin and Sue.